And welcome to another edition of the Will and Dave Show. Unfortunately, this week it is without the Will because he is somewhere over in Ontario somewhere. We're not exactly sure where, but he's over there somewhere. So you're stuck with me and a few friends, which we're going to introduce in a few minutes. But before we get all crazy, we're going to thank our sponsors because we do have a very amazing sponsor tonight, and that is coming right up.
Hi, I'm Susan. I think that in all the world, there's nothing quite like the coziness of a handmade quilt. So I'm on a mission to spread that love as far and wide as I can. If you're a quilt maker, I offer long arm quilting services, and I accept work from anywhere in North America. If you already know how to make quilts and you want to learn how to machine quilt them yourself, I have a number of classes and lots of tutorials available that can help you with that. And if you don't want to do any of those processes, you just want to go straight to having the quilt with no delay, I do have a number of fully completed quilts available for sale as well. So details on all of those things can be found on my website, www.stitchedbysusan.com. Well, I've got to get back to quilting, so I'm going to let you get back to the Will and Dave Show. Enjoy.
So that is Stitched by Susan, the other half of the Will and Dave show. And we're very proud of Susan and what she has done. And if you, that's the wrong one. I want this one. And I want to hide my brother because he's not on the show yet. I'm going to do that. There you go. He's gone. This is, if you want to support the show, you can run and grab us a coffee. www.buymeacoffee.com/Will and Dave show. I'll get that out sooner or later. You see, without Will here, the show goes to hell. But yeah, so this is a different show tonight. William's on the road for about a 40-hour road trip. And so I'm on the air. And when I'm on the air by myself, I need friends because I can't fill an hour of talking. So because William's so good, I had to bring in two friends for him. So the first one that I'd like to introduce is my brother Mallory. Mallory is my older, smaller brother, and he owns a business in Fort St. John, BC. And he's just an all-around great guy, except if you're 6 years old and he thinks you need a whooping, then he's not an altogether great guy. The other one on the show tonight, his name you will have seen before. It's Tim VandenHeuvel. He has fired me more often than I can remember. I worked for him for a number of years, and I'd like to say he's an all-around great guy, but he is a Vancouver Canucks fan, or he used to be before the world went to hell. So he's going to be on the show. And the topic of the show this evening is small business in COVID, or in the middle of a global whatever this thing is that we call it. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on the cohorts, Mallory and Tim. Hey, guys.
Hey, how you doing, guys?
Are you there, Mallory?
I am here.
How did you like that intro?
That was good. I'm just a friend, but that's okay.
No, you're related to me. For better or for worse, you are related to me.
No, that's for sure. We are related.
So how's life up in Fort St. John, Mallory? And while we're on it, would you tell us what you do and your business?
Yeah. So David said I live in Fort St. John, British Columbia. It's up north. It's a place where even a virus doesn't want to live this far north. It's made its way up here in a little bit, but I'm sure it's not nearly as prevalent as it's been in other places. In Fort St. John, I have a small business. We have a truss company. We manufacture wood trusses and do design, manufacture, and delivery of wood trusses and roof systems and floor systems and things like that. I employ about 8 people.
So I have to ask you, Mallory, if you employ about 8 people, how many of them actually work for you?
Someone asked me that the other day. They asked me how many people work for me, and I said about half of them. But yeah.
And you,
but
Tim?
They're good people.
What's your life story, Tim?
Well, you probably know the first half of it or whatever when I was living in Fort St. John and running a small business up there that you were an integral part of. Since that time, I've moved on and I'm now living in the interior of British Columbia, affectionately known as the Shuswap region. It's near the Okanagan Shuswap area, I guess. Very heavily dependent on tourism, and I'm one of 4 partners in the small business. It's myself, my wife, my daughter, and my son-in-law. It's a little grocery, liquor store, lotto, very small rural area of the Shuswap along the lake. And as I said before, it's we depend on tourism, and it's this COVID has really affected that.
So I just want to say right off the top, I heard you actually say out loud It's on YouTube. It's being recorded. That I was an integral part. I'm going to write that in my epitaph and stick it on my headstone because I don't think I've ever heard you admit that before.
Yeah, probably never again. That kind of a slip of the tongue.
Yeah. So we were talking earlier before we go on air, and we were asking each other, like what is acceptable in this conversation? And I told you both that there are no rules. It's anything goes. It's how has just operating a business in the middle of a pandemic, in the middle of what is a global interruption, how has it affected you and what has it done to your business? For some businesses, it's been really good. Have at it, Tim.
I'll kick it off.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you, when it first hit, and as I stated earlier, we depend on tourism. That's what makes this whole area breathe life into it. Like normally, we're just coming up to the Victoria Day long weekend, which is next weekend, and that's kind of the kickoff to summer. Last year, in hindsight, I really don't think was as bad as it is this year. We're under more restrictions here. They're not, by health regulations, we're not allowing anybody to come from different health regions into this area. So we've essentially locked out the lower mainland, Vancouver Island, and that affects us. Many of the homes and cabins that are owned here are by far probably 50 to 60% are owned by out-of-town people, and they normally come up around Easter, and then on the long weekend is the kickoff to summer, and we're not seeing it. We've dropped essentially 20 to 25% lower this year than we were last year, just because of the additional restrictions, and by now having the road checks, the Alberta factors another really large portion of our business, and the government has basically said they don't want Albertans coming to British Columbia. Well, it's affected us. It's affected all small businesses down here. I was the vice president of the Chamber of Commerce here locally for the South Shoe Swap, and it's devastating. We're predicting if this lasts, well, let me put it this way. 80% of the businesses in the South Shoe Swap are mom and pop operations. They're small, independent, little grocery stores, little corner stores, food outlets, restaurants, that type of thing. If this lasts beyond the long weekend, we're going to lose at minimum 50%, if not higher.
So I have to ask you, Tim, I'm looking online. I'm going to show this picture. So this is a photo of the roadblock on one of the highways near you.
Yeah, Highway 5, Coquihalla. It's right at the old toll booth. It was one of the major arteries coming out of the lower mainland into the Okanagan region.
So I counted the cops in this picture, and there's like 18 police cars in that picture.
How asinine is that?
Like, is that really necessary? Like, is there a run of criminals moving between health districts? Is this a thing?
No, that's, I guess you can call, if you are coming up here to open your cabin, pay taxes, and support the local economy, I guess you're being called a criminal because you're not allowed to do that anymore. And
so are there fines if you do it, or what is
huge.
The story?
Yep.
Like how much?
I heard in the neighborhood of $750 if you are not part of if you're not abiding by the health regulations.
Right.
And I just read online here the other day that if you ignore the payment of it, they will not renew your driver's license when it comes due.
I sent that to Mallory the other day. I asked him if he's paying all his COVID fines.
I don't know what's going on, to be honest with you. Like, it doesn't matter who you talk to here. In northern British Columbia, we all knew that it was a resource town, and oil and gas, logging, resources are what made that area run. Well, we're just the opposite of it here. What we have here is tourism, and we need the people from northern British Columbia. We need the people from the Lower Mainland. We need the Albertans. We need all tourists to come here. The money in this area is generated for small business between May long weekend and September long weekend. And then it starts to drop off drastically.
So I'm
By
going to pause you for
January,
just a minute, Tim. This is on the BC website, that if the restrictions need to be enforced, the police can issue a fine for $575. That's a lot of money
Yeah.
for anybody. Even in
Well, it
American
is.
dollars, that's going to
And,
be a lot of money.
try and put yourself in your shoes there. You've worked all your life. You have a little cabin along the lake. You want to get away from the hustle and bustle out of the Lower Mainland. So you want to come up here and spend it with your family or your loved ones or whatever, and be out in the middle of nowhere where you can essentially hide from COVID, and you're being fined to come up here and look at your property, to even look at it, to drive in here. You can't. They're stopping you from doing that. Yet you have to pay provincial taxes on it. You have to pay your land taxes. You have to do all that, and they're stopping you from doing it. And those are the people that we rely on to employ the small business and to pay our wages at our store.
So Mallory, I'm going to turn to you. And what has it done in your neck of the woods?
Well, I've worked every day. My boys have worked every day. We've had to do the precautions that were necessary, but I just waited, and I'm still waiting for the other foot to drop when a government requirement will impact us in a more severe way. The fact that we don't deal with the public in a very large manner probably worked in our advantage to keep our shop running. But we've had some exposure to the COVID virus. Its impact was so minimal, and yet in a health manner. And though I don't disagree or dispute the fact that it has affected some people with their health very drastically, but not the people I've worked with, not the people I know. And so it's so much invasion into running a business, operating a business. It's made it very difficult, but we are fortunate. We're not losing wages, and we're not working because of this. And it's interesting to hear Tim's story, because it's very true. What we do, we're still going, but what they do is they depend on people to be there, and that's what's been so drastically reduced because of this. Right or wrong, I guess that's what we can debate. But
well, it is interesting in your industry and in the building industry. I mean, in the U.S. and in Canada, it never really eased off. And here it's booming. I don't know up there, but here, like, everybody is building. You look at the price of lumber, as we've talked about in the past. Like, all the commodities are through the roof, as there is a shortage of them. Is that hitting you as well?
Oh, incredibly. Trying to source material, everyone's on allocation, where you're only given so much based on past usage of product. But you're right. It's whatever's driving this economy is not something I understand at all. When I look at the pricing of materials, they talk about supply and demand. Supply and demand, by definition, is an equilibrium of where consumer and producers somewhere meet in the middle, and they have this agreement. And I'm thinking, there's no agreement here. This economy, the cost of product and the availability of product is having its impact. Again, it always boils down to the consumer, the house buyer, the gasoline buyer.
Well, if I can chime in here, like, even in our neck of the woods here, and I can go back to last fall and of the great toilet paper shortage of 2020. And you talk about supply chain issues, it's all over. And the hard part in our little business is trying to tell the consumer that we're being told that you can only have, and I'll just take a figure, you're only allowed to have 10 cases of toilet paper this month. Well, when it's gone, it's gone. You know what I mean? And then
That's
you
a
tell
scary
people,
example to use. I'm sorry, Tim. Would you use beer or something? I don't want to hear about a shortage of toilet paper.
well, so let's go to beer.
Yeah.
Here's another perfect example. Okay, you drink whatever brand it is, and it's your favorite. And I don't know if I can say it on the air or whatever. Let's just say it's brand X.
You
Okay,
can
and
say
that's what.
whatever you like. There are no rules here.
So let's say it's brand X, Budweiser. So you come in and you have your case of beer or whatever. Well, it's not here this week. Well, how come? Well, because we ordered it and we couldn't get it. Well, why not? Now, listen to this, because there's a shortage of aluminum cans and they're unable to produce the beer to put in aluminum cans to come to our store. Now, I don't know if this is what's happening in United States, but we're seeing it all along, all over the place. So then you order glass. Well, nobody wants to have glass because we live on the Okanagan in the shoe swap and on the beaches. Nobody wants to have glass, and you're going to break it.
Right.
But we're seeing it everywhere. Like it's absolutely horrible to run a business right now. And I feel sorry for my daughter. She's the one that's really taken the brunt of it. And customers don't understand what shortages mean. We've lived in a very free world for many, many years, many decades. And now all of a sudden, when you tell them that they can't have their beer because it's a shortage of cans, you get the deer in the headlights look, and then they become rude, they become belligerent. It's not a fun time.
Right. So is there...
It's a Canadian thing, Dave. It's a Canadian thing.
Oh, I think it's an American thing too. So here's a question. So in the shortage, how do you make up for that? Are you raising your prices? Are you eating the loss? Like, what do you do to make up for what you can't sell and yet maintain your lifestyle?
Well, there's the catch-22. You're on a slippery slope. If you start to raise prices, people complain and they're going to go elsewhere. Now, you can't. It's hard to read the psyche of people and your customer, but you can't raise the prices. We're eating it at this particular point in time. We try to point them in a different way. Well, can you use this? Can you use, will you take
Right.
Bud Light for your beer or whatever? It's not easy.
Right. So you, Mallory,
then,
on the allotment issue, is there any answer in your world in that allotment issue for what you can buy? How do you account for? What do you do
I think
for it?
you said that. I think you said this is a matter of a discussion on small business and small business. We don't have much say. We don't have much input. We basically take what's given to us. It's the big boys that seem to dictate so much, and so when they come to us and they say you can only have so many 1,000 pounds of plates for my operation a month, that's it. There's no recourse. There's no nothing. So you.
How do you make up for that, though? Or do you raise your prices as you can only do X amount of?
No, I didn't raise my price.
Okay.
I mean, my price has changed because of the cost of material.
Right.
So yes, in that respect, we pass on the cost increases. I'm curious, Tim, because when you say that about aluminum cans, one of the stories that I've heard, and it's a great story. I was wondering about. We deal with a lot of engineered wood product. We refer to it as EWP. In engineered wood product, they were telling us that in Texas, this plant, in all that cold weather that they had, it froze and the pipes burst, and therefore they can't make resin. And so as a result of this, we can't get some of our beam material in Texas. And I'm thinking, oh, okay. And I didn't think much about it. I thought, okay, whatever. Everyone's trying to come up with some explanation for these things. Well, the other day, a guy was in my shop talking about ABS pipe. It's a pipe we use for plumbing systems, for plumbing houses and residential purposes primarily. They can't get ABS pipe. And so I asked the fellow, well, why is that? What's the problem? And he said, well, it's funny because there's this plant where they make this resin down in Texas. And I said, you got to be kidding me. You're going to tell me the same story. Stop. Let me tell you. So let me guess. The pipes froze and they couldn't make the resin to make your ABS pipe. And when I heard this story, like completely, totally unrelated people, same story that they're using, that they've been told to tell them why they can't have ABS pipe, why we can't have EWP. It's I don't believe it. That's what it boils down to.
I agree with you. It's you can start bringing in the conspiracy theorist or whatever you want to, but I just cannot believe that if we're talking like this in 2021, this sounds like something more that you would have heard.
I just want to make sure we're covered here while Tim and Mallory get into their conspiracy theories. I came with my prop.
But it reminds me of what you should be hearing, and you see these memes all over Facebook. This is something that you would be you hear from happening in the Second World War.
Yeah.
You're being curtailed, you're being stopped on the highway to check your paperwork to make sure that you're legal to go through the checkpoint. You're stopped on this, you're being curtailed on how much product you can sell. For you, Mallory, you're told how many how many pounds of metal that you can use. You're capped out. This is not a free enterprise or a free world, in my opinion. And I'm sorry, call me pro-business, but that's the way I've lived my entire life. Now I'm in my late 50s, and to see my children, my daughter and son-in-law, struggling so hard.
Okay, hold on, Tim. I'm going to stop you right there. You're not in your late 50s. You're in your pre-60s. Let's just get this right.
Thanks, well, I'm still trying to be young, but it's difficult. It's, they work hard, and I want to see a future for my grandchildren. And at this particular point in time, I have never been so, and we'll get on to the political aspect here. I've never been so against authority, against government, because there's so much intervention. Even with this COVID thing, I'm all about following rules and doing the right thing. But when they change the goalposts every week, you can't do this. Well, now you can do this. Well, no, we made a mistake. You got to go back and you can't do it. Like, it's just back and forth. And for small business, having to put up a sneeze guard, then you don't have to have a sneeze guard, and then you have to do cleaning, and then you don't have to do cleaning. It just goes back and forth. I think this is what really is becoming of why people are starting to think that this is all untrue, because the goalposts always change, and we can't keep up to it, and it costs money each time those goalposts change.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, for both of you, if you look at the issues for the pricing and supply chain, I think I can remove this now. Are we done with the conspiracy theories?
You want to keep it there because it might come back. No, okay, it will come back.
I'm keeping it handy. So how much of that, in your opinion, and not in your conspiracy theory opinion, in the actual opinion, is the result of government intervention, and how much of it is the result of, how to word this?
It's media
taking advantage of government intervention.
It's taking advantage of government intervention and the media blowing it out of proportion. And I go right back to the toilet paper pandemic of 2020. None of that had to happen. None of it. It was an absolute frenzy where people were living in fear that they're not going to have toilet paper. And we were talking to our reps. We were talking to them and saying, they said, we just can't keep up to the demand. Well, it's hard to keep up to the demand when you have your entire pickup box loaded up with, 26 cases of toilet paper. If you would have bought, an 8-roll pack and that would have lasted you however long, but no, I'm going to buy 26 cases of it. And not just you, but your neighbor, the guy down the road, the guy across the street, and everybody did it. Well, yeah, there's going to be a shortage. It just can't help. But the media drove that right into the ground. They're the ones that caused that situation.
So when you look at that, remember early on in the pandemic, I was sitting at Costco with a buddy of mine, and we're sitting there in the food court as it was still open at the time, and we're watching the carts go by with water and toilet paper, and
Yeah,
mounded full, and not the shopping carts, but the push carts with the flat bottom, and they're
yeah.
mounded up with 18 and 20 cases of water or toilet paper. And I want to know how many people are living in their house and how long is that going to last them? Because they have enough paper and water to last them for 100 years.
Oh, I agree. I don't know. I don't know what's happening to society as we're going through this pandemic. I'm losing faith in humanity, to be honest with you. Like, it's really a difficult pill for me to swallow
You
to
better
see
have
what's
another
happening
shot
out
of your
there.
gin and tonic. It'll make you like humanity better.
It's water.
Okay.
But it's the truth. Like, it's frustrating.
Yeah.
And and I feel for Mallory. Like, we're being forced the same way. Like, if we order, let me say, 50 cases of Budweiser, well, you're going to get 10 this week. Really?
Yeah.
10? And so you phone up, and we're mandated under BC Liquor Control Act. So we have to order all
Right.
our liquor through the BC Liquor Board. And guess where they're putting all their, when they get a pallet of their liquor in? It doesn't go to the small rural liquor stores. It ends up going to the government liquor stores. So we're becoming a more government-run institution again.
So I was
Free
going to
enterprise
ask
is out
you
the
that,
window.
as I knew all your booze all came from the provincial government. So is
Yeah.
there a shortage as well at the provincial stores?
No,
Interesting.
no, not at all. And this is where it becomes difficult to the consumer. They don't understand that, and they're not educated enough to look into it, because they're going, well, I can travel 25 minutes to the south and I can get it at the liquor store. Yeah, it's a government run liquor store. They're going to get everything first. We
Right.
get it. Everything that dribbles off the truck is what the little rural liquor agencies such as our store, and well, I'll be honest, the only government liquor store in this area is at a good driving 25 minutes away.
Right.
Every other liquor store is a little independently owned mom and pop store called a rural liquor agency. And there's just I can name half a dozen within 10 minutes.
Well, I can tell you one thing. In America, if there was a shortage on beer, you would see the muskets and the swords and the bayonets there, and there would be an uprising in America because they're not going to be short of their beer.
But let's talk about that. Let's see you. Like, the United States is opening wide up. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
Yeah.
here, we're still being mandated to wear the masks. We're the and I don't know if I can say it or not, but
You can say
I
whatever you
will.
want.
The Gestapo is still stopping everybody on and then you get on Facebook and you get berated, and it's so hard as a small business owner. You want to try and shake these people and go, look, if we're not here, we're not going to be employing another 6 to 8 people. Like, where are they going to go?
Yeah.
So
You know,
here's
and
one.
it,
Here's one
but
of the
yet,
rubs, though, Tim, and this is one of for all of us who operate a small business. For sure, in the U.S. now, it is hard to find employees as they're making way more on EI than they ever were
oh, don't
working.
even get me started there. It's the
So
same here.
there's this whole argument that they're working, but they're not working, and the business
No, they're
owner is who is taking the hit, and not the employee.
Yeah, you're right.
But see, this seems to be. We were talking about the mixed messages. How many people can attend a church unless one of them is dead by a third, and you think, why? Who makes these rules up? Who does this? But the thing is, when you talk about these issues of the rules and regulations and so forth, they don't jive, they don't mesh, they don't add up together, and that's where people sit back and they look at this and they go, why do they expect us to believe this? How can so many people be on EI and be out of work, and yet the economy is just busting that they can't make enough product of what I need They can't make enough of it, they tell me. They tell me that there's whole subdivisions that are just framed up, that they can't put sheathing on it because OSB is not available. How is that possible when so many people are, maybe, I get so passionate about that, I get so angry. But how can, it's these mixed messages. How can it be so busy and at the same time, and some of it I don't believe. You look at the price of lumber right now, historic. The mills are running away with money. We should have all bought their stock and just we would have retired wealthy. But instead, they just shove these prices at the consumer, and the consumer's looking at all this saying, we have no choice but to buy it. I mean, we could stop. But
so here you go, Mallory. Let's talk about that then, if we're talking about house building and real estate or whatever. Yeah. Here we are in the Okanagan, Okanagan Shuswap area. We have seen an increase of darn near 400% in real estate sales from year over year. We're seeing houses that are selling now in excess of $1.5 million only, 2 years ago that you could buy for $750,000. We're seeing prices double. I have a real estate friend, and he is saying that 90% of the sales that are happening here are without subject clauses and without financing. Now, don't claim to be a smart man, but where is this money coming from? Was the middle class literally that wealthy in Canada? Because so then you look at it and go, well, where are these people coming from? Oh, well, they're from the Lower Mainland, they're from Alberta, they're from Northern BC, they're all over the place. But you can't come here because you're being stopped at a roadblock. I have never been more confused on the messaging with this whole. This is the thing. Like, yeah, I'll buy into it, and I was totally involved with it when it first happened on March 13th last year.
Yeah.
And I'll take precautions. I believe it. But I'm becoming more and more skeptical of what, like you said, how are these shortages happening? Why are they not being told? Like, yet everybody's so bloody busy, but no one's working. I look at the lake today in the Shuswap. It was 27 above Celsius. Beautiful day, sunny, hot day. You would think the marinas and all the boats would be on the water. Nothing. But oh my God, we're busy. We're wide open.
Yeah.
With what?
Yeah. Go figure.
That's 80 degrees for you Americans, by the way.
So it's just these mixed messaging again. Like, so you look at the marinas. Oh, well, we're busy. Doing what? You're not selling any of the fuel that you were to the boats that are out there. You don't have your dining lounges and your pubs open because you can only have, 10% or whatever the number is today. I don't even know anymore on the patio. And you're telling me you're busy? I'm confused here.
Yeah. No, it's the mixed message. When things sort of all started back in March, and I just made a decision that because March is when we start the building season up north, and I just made a decision. I'm not going to, because I didn't know what was going to happen. So I'm not going to spend any money. We're just going to work as best we could. And everybody was kind of feeling it, slowed down. And then after about a month and a half, then it just started to roll again, or people started going. I didn't spend any money. I didn't make any investments. I just kept things rolling. And now here we are, never thinking that a year later we'd be in the same position where now we're still working, but I don't want to spend any money because now I don't know where the foot's going to stop, when the foot's going to drop and stop this economy. Is it the cheap money that people have access to? But we've never been busier, and I'm grateful for that. And so what I've done in my business, besides curtailing spending, we just hunkered down as a group. And I looked at my employees. Actually, we spoke about it. And I said, I'm going to do everything I can to get us all through this. And we're going to go through this together. And that's what we've done. we've kept people healthy. We've kept people working on a small scale, but that's all we've done. And now we've started this new season, and it's funny because we don't have some virus that I'm worried about. It's still there apparently, but I'm not worried about it. What I'm worried about is an economy that's going to stop. And then what am I going to do for my boys? And so once
Well,
again, I just feel this sense of uncertainty in business.
Right.
Well, this
it's
is
not
the
even
thing,
a
like
virus related.
I've been in business, throughout my entire life, owning small businesses. And the uncertainty is, as you state, is never been greater. Like and like you said it so well, like when is the next foot going to drop? And when do we have to start laying people off? When do we keep the doors open? What's next? But everything that I have learned over the years in business seems to have gone right out the window. And you said it the same
That's
thing
the
at the
truth.
beginning when this all started. I was, oh boy, let's tighten the belt. There's no way we're going to lock this down. We're going to, be lean and mean. Nothing's going to, things are not going to go good. And like you said, 6 weeks later, I'm looking at the wife and I'm looking at my kids going, what is going on here?
Yeah.
Why are people, but we're feeling it now. We are literally feeling it now with these lockdowns that we've seen and these new restrictions. It's tougher this year than it was last year.
So I have to ask you, Tim, I'm going to show you this this ad on the shoe swap for the Shark Shack.
Yeah.
So
wonderful place.
So in the ad for this, and I don't have the quote here. They were saying the last year was their best year. So
well, and you tell me how
can that be?
You and I talked about that. Like,
yeah,
I don't know if you've got some hotshot real estate agent that's exaggerating a little bit here, because they're under the same rules as everybody else. There's only so many people that can come on board. There's only so many people that can be this. You're restricted on that. You tell me. I don't know, Dave.
All of this.
Well, you're not going to try to sell and say you had the worst year ever.
Exactly.
Just saying.
And I have to wonder, when you look at that ad, the last line is it's appraised at over $1 million, and yet it's listed for $750,000. Who sells something for less than appraisal unless they really want to get rid of it?
Doesn't sound like a buyer's market. We were just talking about that.
Yeah,
a seller's
market.
I apologize. Seller's market.
So now that you're on that topic, like I follow a lot of that on Facebook, the hits that particular ad has got is astronomical.
Yes, it is.
Now, this place is only open 3 months of the year. 3 months. Like I said, May long weekend it kicks off, but they don't open up until June 1st, I believe. So it's June, July, and August. They're closed by September 1st. There's their 3 months. Now, they can make enough money to support themselves working 3 months. That place was a gold mine.
Yeah.
Absolute gold mine. There were boats. They'd have valets out there, parking the boats or whatever. And you were rifled in, rifled out. It's a great place. It's a wonderful spot.
I ate there with you one time.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, us and our wives went there.
Yeah, that's right.
I have a picture of Susan in a bathing suit that if I throw online, I'll get in trouble. So I better not put that on.
Don't show me in my Speedo.
You were the one that taught me how to jump in the lake in a life jacket upside down and sit there and drink a beer. It was awesome.
Isn't that awesome? Yeah, you put the life jacket on upside down like a diaper.
Yeah. You just sit in the life jacket. It's a great plan. So let me ask you, Mallory, as I know early on in BC, they were offering, or actually I think it was all over Canada, the federal government was offering the CERB, the assistance for payroll. So you took advantage of that. You did not, Tim.
No.
So so in your business, Mallory, how did that help, and how did you use that through the pandemic?
It certainly helped. I am grateful that it was made available, but I did not use it as a business investment. when I had some fellas who were not able to work or things slowed down, I did use it to continue wages for a while. Certainly, some of it went in the business. That's part of what it was for, but it did certainly help us continue on. It, you know, I Tim said something, and it's even more because it's funny. I look at my employees, and they mean a lot to me. They come and make my lifestyle possible because they want to come work with us. And when it's family, like in Tim's case, and you see them and their possibility for making their living being threatened, it's a concern of mine for them. And Dave, I was thinking about, you gave me this here for a remember
Voluntary
this quote?
leadership. Yeah.
The very beginning, when he said something, and he says, "Shepherd well," and that's how I look at what I do. And they're not my daughter and son-in-law, and so I feel what Tim's feeling, and maybe he feels it more acutely than even I do. But I see, I have young men who are working for me that have children and families and mortgages and so forth. And when I see all this upheaval going around, it really threatens them. Sure, it threatens me, but it threatens them too. Right. And together, collectively, we've just, I don't want to say we've resisted, but we've just kept working. You just hunker down with like they say, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. And we just kept going. And I haven't been in the mall in I don't know how long.
Is the mall even
March.
open? Is the
I
mall?
don't know. I have no idea.
So let's talk about that. It's strange, and I think, Dave, I've even mentioned it to you sometimes. My wife and I had to go into town here, which is it's about an hour away, to Kamloops, and we drove through there, and I'm driving through some of these mall parking lots and stuff, and it's like you could shoot a cannon off in there. And I'm thinking, how are all these businesses, these little shops, being able to stay open? I am so confused, and it's so wrong, in my opinion, because I'd love to see the hustling, the entrepreneurialism, the people hustling and going around and making deals and that type of thing. And it seems like we're just in limbo. Just, you get up in the morning, you live your life. We can't make any plans. You can't plan for the future right now. You can't plan for next year. You can't do any of that. What if we're lucky to plan if we know what's going to happen next week? And it is because We've been through this so many times. Like, oh yeah, now we're getting all this on the TV, Dr. Henry, and oh yeah, we're going to make some changes and we're going to relax some restrictions, but not till after the long weekend. Okay, so we're going to write the long weekend off. We're done with that. But I'll guarantee you, and this is just my conspiracy theory, you can put your tinfoil hat back on, Dave, is that, you mark my words on this one, is that we will see some of the rules relaxed by after the long weekend, which everybody's going to be so happy, and the case count's going to go back up. And by Canada Day, or July 4th for you, the Americans, but by Canada Day, we're going to have to lock you guys down again because the case count's going up. It seems to be this roller coaster yo-yo ride. And I can get into arguments with so many people talking about this because, it's, the anti-vaxxers, and it's the non-mask wearers, and it's the non-this, and it's the non-that. No, it's not. I'll follow the rules. I'll do it. But if we've been following the rules like the majority of the people are, we should be done with this. If mask wearing was so prevalent and it was working so well, why are the case counts still going up?
So I'm going to ask you guys, as this is one that has amazed me. If anybody walked up to you and said, could close your doors for a year and a half, would you have lasted
No.
If your doors were closed for a year and a half? And yet you look at businesses, an easy example is movie theaters, have been closed for a year and a half. How are they surviving?
Gyms and
gyms, yeah.
Here's another good one. those poor people have been open and closed numerous times. Like,
Yes.
how about the
Yeah.
restaurants?
Yep.
They have to order their food and their perishables,
Yep.
in advance. Well, oh no, you're closed next week, or you're closed on
Yep.
Friday. Give you 24 hours notice. Well, they've now lost how much of their food?
Mm-hmm.
The restaurants here have lost all their revenue now for Mother's Day brunches, which
Yep.
was a huge event. You would have to make reservations 2 weeks in advance for that. Well, there was nothing. I was able to take my wife to McDonald's and sit on the tailgate of the pickup. What a wonderful Mother's Day that was.
I-
Did you
It's
biggie size
horrible.
it for? Did you biggie size
Yeah, I
it
did.
for her?
I did.
Tim?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
See, I know your wife. She wasn't expecting much more, so you're good.
True, but it's frustrating to me. And I think,
Yeah.
as much as I said too, I want to come down and visit you, Dave. Like, I enjoyed coming
Yeah.
down. Like, I'm a 6-hour drive from you, and I think it would have been we've been good friends for many, many years, and we're stuck here. We haven't
Yeah.
gone anywhere.
Yeah.
So it's a different animal here. Because one thing's interesting is on Wednesday, our president made the announcement that it's okay now. You can go maskless if you have been vaccinated. Vaccinated. Okay, I'm sorry.
Sorry, David. I couldn't help it.
I like vaccinated. It sounds
Okay,
worse.
okay.
And when you have been vaccinated, apparently it's okay to go maskless. And now all the country is saying, "Oh, cool." But the one issue is nobody's allowed to ask you if you have been vaccinated or not, because it's against the law to ask for private medical information. So in essence, what it did is it removed the mask mandate without actually removing the mask mandate. So everybody now is going into Costco with no mask. Everybody's going into restaurants with no mask, as they're not allowed to ask them if they have been vaccinated or not. So therefore, what the government smartly, what they did is they removed the mask mandate without actually saying it's okay. You can remove the mask mandate now.
Well, I can bring something up here.
Yeah.
In fact, just before we went live on the air, I got a call from my son-in-law and daughter, and they have some good friends. The wife works in the health authority. Let's put it that way. And she was telling Brittany is that within the next few weeks, they are preparing that we will have a vaccination passport coming down in British Columbia. So it's coming.
It's interesting
Now,
as
it's the same. Let's go back to the Second World War, where you were being tattooed on your arm so that you could be.
I'm putting it back on.
Dave,
Yes.
Dave, you don't need to put it on. Think about it. You see some on Facebook the other day. Guy had 38 sheets of 7/16 OSB that left over from a project he had done.
Yeah.
I seen that.
You see that? Willing to
I seen that one
for an F-350.
Yeah.
2019 F-350. And the crazy thing, this stuff, like a product that I just pulled out the other day, June 10th. I went and bought a lift of lumber. I bought 8s, 10s, 12s, 14s, 16s. 5 lifts. It cost me $6,600. Last Monday, I went to pick up one lift of 2x6 18. It was $6,100. One lift. When I went and bought the week before 5 lifts, it cost me $27,000. 2 years difference. And you're telling me that product, I mean, you don't need to wear a hat. This is not conspiracy theory. This is just straight up what's driving the price of lumber. I was talking about EWP the other day. I got to you earlier. The other day, I got a phone call from one of my suppliers, and he said, there's a problem that there's no more black spruce in Quebec, that they can build this stuff at the plant there. But not to worry, the manufacturer said, we can still supply you in Western Canada, except we're going to do it from California. Apparently, there's no black spruce problem in California. Of course, they buy their lumber from us. We ship it down to them. They turn around, turn it into EWP, and then ship it back to me. And for that service, I get an increase in price of 11%. Because they don't have black spruce in Quebec? Like, really? I tell you, we don't know what it is. Whatever's motivating all of this historic pricing, historic supply chain issues, all of this, whatever's behind it, we don't know what it is, but it's very real, and it's very real for the small business guy who's trying to make it happen. You just mentioned something, David. You said the guy's walking into Walmart, walking to Kmart or Walgreens or and Canadian Tire. These places are flat out. But the truth is, I should go to the mall, Tim. You're absolutely right. I should go to the mall, and I should go to that mom and pop shop, and I should support them if I could.
Except you can't.
That's what we do. Well, I probably should more than I just don't go out much. But that's the thing. I'm grateful for the people to patronize my business. And I try to let them know that, especially when they have choices. But right now, their choices are being taken away.
There you go. It's the free. I guess choice is another word for freedom, in my opinion.
That's right. Sure. Hey, when you think about it, in the war, people would take wheelbarrow loads of money to buy a loaf of bread. And we all talk about it and we think, oh, what's that like? Well, now it takes a wheelbarrow load of money to build a small deck.
Yeah.
Go figure. It's nuts.
So what would it cost, Mallory? You're a carpenter guy on the side. So what would it cost you to build a deck on a house now? An average, let's say 8 by 12 or 12 by 16.
Couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you. There's other people more qualified, but I can tell you this.
It'd be 3 times the cost, though.
The same house that I would put trusses on for $5,000.
Yeah,
they're not going to put trusses on their house for less than $9,000 right now.
So damn near double.
Yeah. Oh, it's more than that. It should never be that way. That's over a period of time, but it shouldn't be that way. And yet, go figure, they're not stopped building.
So Mallory,
I'm assuming someone's buying these homes.
You told me a story, Mallory, a week or so ago, and I wanted to hear this story again, as it was indicative of the end user's mindset. Would you tell the story of the guy who ordered the trusses for the shed or the extension, whatever that was?
I'll tell you that story. It was a small little addition, and while he called and he knew he had dropped the ball and trying to get these trusses ordered. And so he said, listen, if you could fit them in, we'd really appreciate it. I'm willing to pay a little bit extra. And so he didn't call and speak to me. He spoke to one of my sales guys, and the sales guy came upstairs to the design fella, and that was me. And I was designing this for him. I said, listen, the price is going to be $26.90 for this set of trusses. And I'm just thinking, it's almost embarrassing to say this. It's just a small little set. But it is what it is. And so he went downstairs, he called this fella, told him, the price of the trusses. And so he came back upstairs. I said, well, is it a job or is it not? And he said, well, you know what? He choked a little bit on the price, but he said, yeah, let's go ahead and build it. And I was looking at him and I saw his notebook, and he had not written $26.90. What he had written was $62.90. And I said, David, your thing says $62.90. He goes, well, what did you tell me? I said, well, $26.90. And I said, he wants to build them for $62.90? That's the mentality. So we called him back. The rest of the story is the most important part. We called him back. We said, no. That was a mistake. But he gave us the order at 3 times the amount than what it actually should have cost, because the mentality is that's what it is. I mean, whatever it is, I guess I need it. I'm going to pay it. And it's a frightening thing, but it's very real.
Here's the question I have, though, and I don't know that we can answer this, but where does that money come from? Because he's not making 3 times the hourly wage he was a year ago.
He's just passing it all to the homeowner. That's all they can do, Dave.
Where does that come from?
Exactly. That's the thing, Tim. Listen, a developer comes into my office, I'm going to build 10 homes. I got one right now. He's going to build 3 homes, and they want the price for those 3 trusses, and it's way more than it would have been if they had been doing this a year ago, and sure they're concerned about the cost, but they're not going to pay it. It's the consumer, the person who's going to buy these homes is going to pay, and yet they're still building homes, and they're still selling them.
Our government keeps telling us that inflation is in check. We're doing okay. Inflation's not rampant. If you take out the price of used cars, quote unquote used cars, and gasoline, oh yeah, we're sitting right where we need to be at 2%. Cost of living is going up 2%. I call bullshit on that. I really do.
Yeah. So here's a word of wisdom, guys. Here's a word of wisdom from Alex. I just have to make it small enough you can read it. It comes from our lovely stimulus package.
Oh, don't get me going on stimulus. Don't get me going on that.
Let me tell you a little story now that we're talking about small businesses or whatever. You remember a gentleman that worked for me who's living in Grand Prairie at a car dealership now. And I think you know who I'm talking about, Dave. He was telling me here the other day that he does not have a pickup to sell on his lot. Not one. There's nothing there.
Go to Ward right now. It's not there. Nothing there. Empty.
No.
So if you're interested in renting a car in Hawaii right now, I have a friend. I had a friend, Steve Jewell. You remember Steve? He was on the show. He's booking a trip to Hawaii in August. He rented a car for 1 week. He got it for $1,250 for a week, and he got a deal. Alex, who works in the rental car business, has seen a car go for over $500 a day.
Oh my Lord!
For a car, that's not a Mustang. That's not a Corvette. Is it a specialty car? As there are no cars. There's no inventory.
But inflation's in check. There's no problem with inflation.
No, yeah. Your uncle, your brother-in-law, David.
Yeah, Doug.
trying to buy a truck.
Yeah.
And he goes down. Just look at the price of a truck right now. Just an F-150.
There's no deals anymore. It's MSRP. You're paying what the stickers on the door. There's no more incentives. There's no more, the Costco $500 card. You're paying what's on the price of the truck. If you want it, buy it. If not, see you later. I got 10 more people waiting for it.
Exactly.
It's insanity.
Is it cheap money? Is that what it is, Dave? Is it cheap money?
But you have to be working in order to get the cheap money.
You hope so. You'd hope so. What else would be driving it? How could some people afford these homes? These homes are costing what? By the time it's all said and done, it's going to cost them $40,000 more to build a home.
Well, my real estate buddy down here, he's saying to me that he's been in the business for over 20 years. He has sold more homes from January till the end of April than he has in the past 5 years combined. He's taking the rest of the summer off. There's no inventory here. He says, there's nothing for me to sell. And he says, if I do keep working, I'm just going to be giving it to the government again.
Yeah.
Like income tax is running rampant. Like, I do not know where this money is coming from.
So I'm going to show you some prices here, guys. This is in your town there, Mallory, Fort Motors. This is a 19 Ford Ranger for $47,000. This is a new F-150. It's an XLT, not a Lariat, for $55,000. That's a used car.
Yeah.
Here's a Lariat, a 19 for $57,500.
Yeah, they won't even show you the one under the shroud for $57,900.
Well, there's no picture of it.
Yeah.
Oh, here's one even better. $62,000 for a 2015 F-350.
With 122,000 kilometers.
$62,000.
Yeah.
So
what? What? I'm surprised we haven't brought it up, and I know, Dave, you're at some point gonna have to shut this down.
I'm having way too much fun, guys. Let's keep going.
It actually is a lot of fun, but not one person has brought up the Republic of China in the middle of all this.
Okay, hold on.
There's the hat
No, no,
Okay,
no,
again.
no, 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 no,
I'm
no.
putting the
You
hat
don't need
back
to
on.
do that.
I'm putting the
You
hat
don't
on.
need to do that. But you can't help but wonder that, when all of this, when the previous administration in your country, David, when they were dealing with the issue of masks and ventilators and all that stuff, what they did is they initiated the American possibility, and these guys said, okay, listen, we're not going to depend on China to provide this. They can't provide enough, and so people innovated and they built them here, there, and I still wonder why. There's so many other things involved with it, but why are we so dependent? To find a balance between globalism and nationalism, there's got to be a balance so that we're
Yeah.
not so dependent that because some guy goes goofy in the Suez Canal, the whole world goes to hell. I just don't. It shouldn't be that way,
What about the
and yet it
Michigan
has.
pipeline? We're going to shut down the Michigan pipeline. Yeah.
Oh
We have
man,
you have people filling up their shopping bags with gasoline. Like, give me a break. Like, there you go, back to that hoarding mentality again. There you go
that's
with
right.
the media blowing things out of proportion again. So you get them, instead of hoarding toilet paper, now they're hoarding fuel in plastic bags. I'm Society has gone to hell in a handbasket, in my opinion.
What amazes me with that gas shortage is an amazing example of the American mentality, and not only America. I think it would happen in Canada too.
It's everywhere.
Is there's this idea that as soon as there's an issue, I really need to go and buy a year's worth of whatever it is, if it's gas or toilet paper or whatever. Why? There's not.
Because and I know you put your tinfoil hat back on, it's because if you can get the public to live in fear, you will win the war. And that's my opinion.
I'm
And
just going to leave this hat on for a while.
the media is doing a hell of a good job of keeping people in fear. That's that's what I believe.
So what?
Sorry.
So Mallory, so you are a fan of Tucker Carlson, and William's asleep right now, so he can't argue with you, and he's
That's
not on
too
the
bad.
show.
Yeah.
But why is it that he has struck a chord with those who are right of center? As this is all part and parcel.
Well, I think he represents the ideology of so many of us that we ask the questions. They're hard questions. They're not easy questions. We live in a crazy time, and you watch the things that are happening. You watch the power of the media. You watch. I mean, look at what's happening in New York and that governor and all that. And you watch that and how the media can manipulate that to the masses. And I look at someone like Tucker Carlson, and I say, no, he speaks for me. He speaks for me. He asks good questions. Now, absolutely, we may share some ideology, absolutely, but I don't care about the politics. I care about the questions, the straight questions.
That's well said. I agree.
Say it, ask the question and get a straight answer. And if you can do that, I don't care if you're a liberal or conservative or Democrat or a Republican or a centrist, the people who don't want to make a decision at all. It doesn't matter to me. Just answer the question as best you can. I played golf today with a fella who says he's a liberal and his liberal way of thinking. I have no problem with that. Answer the questions, and we had really good dialogue in regards to policing and the justice system up here, and that's healthy. And I think, you asked me about Tucker. I think he provides a healthy, grounded perspective. Sure, he may have an ideology that a political perspective that he endorses, absolutely, but ask the right question. And leave me to be the one to judge whether or not he's trying to lead me or something. But ask the question.
So I had this topic with Will the other day. We were talking about the show, and he was hot under the collar for something that somebody had done. It might have been Tucker. I can't remember. And he said, these guys are batshit crazy. He said, they are absolutely batshit crazy, Dad. And I said to him, I said, here's the problem, Will. When you go out on a limb and you say these guys are batshit crazy, your Uncle Mallory is not, he isn't batshit crazy. I said, look at Tim VandenHeuvel. He's not batshit crazy. When you look at me, I'm not batshit crazy.
And Uncle Mallory signs his paycheck, too.
Yeah. Except all of us are all saying the same thing. And that's where, so I'm not a fan of Tucker. And yet I do believe that what he says reflects a large swath of society that is asking questions.
Well, Dave, here's the perfect example. Your show was built on the premise where everybody can have their own thoughts, their own ideas. You can talk about it openly. You can have a great discussion, but when you leave, you're all still going to be friends. That's what this was meant to be. And I can't see why it kind of irks me when William says, because we don't believe in his ideology, that everybody else is batshit crazy. I don't agree with that. Let's have a great open conversation, ask the questions. You say your piece, I say mine. Maybe we can meet in the middle. Maybe we can't, but you know what? We're going to shake hands and walk away. Oh, hold on. We're going to bump elbows, I guess, at this point in time.
Sure as hell, I'm not going to hug you.
Okay.
Well, no.
So I have the distinction of being the patriarch of the trio here. And I've known you both when you were young men, when I was a young man. And I will say this, and we don't want to make this discussion about Will, but I want to talk about that perspective. Everyone is entitled to an ideology, a belief, an understanding. But I promise you, as a man who's gone through a number of beliefs, that they change. Life has a way of making us look at things differently as we age. And it may be the fact that we look at our daughters and our son-in-laws and our grandchildren, which unfortunately, David, you haven't seen in such a long time.
Hush yourself already.
Yeah, I know. I had to bring that in. I had
Thank
to bring
you.
Kendra in. She's the sweetest thing in the world.
You bastard, you.
I know. But as we grow older, we change. And you know, and I've watched your show, and I look at Will, and I understand. I've got a bunch of young guys who work for me, and they have a perspective. But I promise them that it will change. They will change when they're signing the checks. It'll change when they're the ones looking after their daughters or son-in-laws that are in business. Small business is tough. It's not easy. And when we watch our children struggle to make their way, we may have made ours, but now we want that to pass on.
Very well said, Mallory. Very well.
I'll give him grace, but I guarantee you that if you were recording all these 25 years from now, and though I won't be here to witness it, Will sit here and he'll say, you know, yeah, I feel a little differently about that than I did.
And maybe this is why my perspective has been different. I started my very first business when I was 21 years old. And, you know, I had many sleepless nights wondering how I'm going to make payroll, how I'm going to pay the bills, how I'm going to do all this. And maybe this is why I'm the way I am. And I guess maybe if I worked for somebody all my life and didn't have to worry about that, maybe my perspective would be different. But like you said, Mallory, running a business today, and I look at my son-in-law and daughter, and I am just absolutely horrified because they do not have the same opportunities that I had being able to make a living, and a damn good living at that. And they're working 3 times as hard as I ever did. As I ever did. And they're being pushed down every which way. And it comes from government intervention, bureaucracy, changing the goalpost. It goes on and on and on and on. And I can, you know, we beat that dog to death, I guess.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to fix it.
I will say this, Tim, you know, I've known you for a while, that in all of the changing economies and all the, you know what? We all made it. We all pushed through it. We all adapted. We changed to the crashes. Look at your parents. But
that's where the entrepreneurialism is.
That's right. That's right. And I have a lot of faith that the people like your daughter and son-in-law, and Will's coming to work for me, that these people will survive all this. I'm going to. I'm counting on it. I got friends who are watching tonight, have businesses. We just adapt. That's what small business owners have to do. It's tough. It's not easy.
Here's what's interesting, though, guys, and I sort of want to point this out, because when you look at entrepreneurs, there are not a whole lot who are under the age of 30 in the manual labor industry. All of them are in tech or in software, or in the things that they can do at their desk. This is one of the rants of Mike Rowe. There's a shortage of plumbers. There's a shortage of carpenters. Mm-hmm. There's a shortage of welders. There's a shortage of the hand businesses, as nobody wants to do it. And so how do you
change society, or how do you change
how do you encourage that? Because there's a lack of entrepreneurs out there. They don't want to work like that.
Well, I will say that I will say this. In the current market, the current scenario, we're not encouraging entrepreneurism because we're willing to pay people to stay home. We're willing to encourage them to not take chances, risk. Maybe that's a better word, to take a risk. And those are the I applaud people that are willing to stand up and say, I'm going to make this happen. Tim, you did. David, you did. I'm still trying, but I'm going to. That will be my legacy. Is he died trying? Is to make this happen, because I think it's in us, but it's encouraged by the success and the failures of others. And when I look at young people who are trying to get into business today, it's tough. It's not for everyone. We know that.
Yeah.
But it can be a successful and a very satisfying career.
Right.
Even in a pandemic, it's just challenging.
So on that note, I'm going to go to Tim. And what would you tell? So not a young entrepreneur, as I think entrepreneurs have. There's all the knowledge, all the books in the world. Although, for the 9 of our listeners, or the 15, or the 37, or the 4 million that are going to be watching this in 2 years, as we're going to be famous. In hindsight, so with COVID and these huge effects that are on business, what would you? I don't even know how to word this. Is there an answer for small business for how to react? Is there a hint for what to do when you're in this?
I think Mallory has kind of hit the nail on the head, if you want to say it, is that you have to adapt. In my previous business endeavors, I adapted to the changing market. Mm-hmm. But it was easier to adapt back then because it wasn't at such a fast pace, and I didn't have all these rules that were changing daily, weekly, monthly. You could adapt to them far easier than you can now. And I'll tell you, watch it. Watch your bottom line very, very closely.
So on that word of wisdom, I think we should wrap up for this week. We are well over our hour mark, but that's all right. It was a great conversation, guys. And in the word of William, in his wisdom, in his closing remarks, everybody stay safe and don't die.
Sounds great.